Sometimes the worst of intentions leads to fabulously unintended consequences. Welcome to American Esoterica. If history class gives you the salt, this is the pepper, the essential stuff in between, the personalities, events, and other ephemera that shape our history and culture. I'm Brian Powers. From the outset, I'll note that this episode will discuss human sexuality and sexual acts and imagery, so it may not be appropriate for all listeners. Let's rate this one PG-13-ish. Ready to continue? Okay. And if it isn't graphic enough for you, though, just subscribe to the naughty level of my Patreon for full access to American Esoterica After Hours. I'm also going to need someone to tell me what a Patreon is. The 50s were a weird time in the United States. World War II had barely been over a decade before a new menace barged into everyone's collective consciousness. Okay, the easy answer is communism, but with Joe McCarthy hogging the spotlight on that one, the state of Florida decided to broaden its approach. Florida, it seems, had set its sights on eliminating not just communism, but homosexuality. Formed in 1956, the Florida Legislative Investigations Committee became better known as the Johns Committee for the man responsible for its existence, State Senator Charlie Johns. Johns was the ringleader of a group of lawmakers known as the Pork Chop Gang, because of their representation of rural areas. It was this group from which the Johns Committee sprang, beginning the hunt for those elusive peccadillos that plagued society, such as people having differing ideas on economic systems, desegregation, or which gender they should be in love with. Just like Joe McCarthy had done in Washington, the committee became infamous for basically making life hell for marginalized groups and anyone not in lockstep with their way of thinking, who were labeled as subversive. Its initial charge was to root out communists in state higher education, so naturally, it took the lead in investigating the allies of desegregation, honing in on the NAACP in hopes of showing it as a communist front. When that didn't pan out as hoped, the Johns Committee threw its weight around the idea that homosexuality and communism were intertwined, so all gayness must be rooted out. For instance, the Johns Committee focused its lens on the activities taking place on campus at the newest state university, the University of South Florida in Tampa in 1962. Seeking to suss out evil influence, the committee came on campus to investigate such obvious signs of intellectual decay as teaching evolution as fact and assigning books like Catcher in the Rye. The editor of the campus newspaper sarcastically welcomed them to campus in a biting op-ed. What we admire most about these people is their vocabulary. Communist, homosexual, pornography. Communist, homosexual, pornography. There is rhythm, beat, and emotional impact in that chant. It will serve as the perfect background music for any play they wish to direct on campus during the next few weeks. We do hope it won't be The Crucible. The committee worked hard on exposing and excising any instance of homosexuality in schools and colleges. Scores of teachers, professors, and students were named a threat because of their sexuality, losing their jobs or getting expelled. Questioning inmates at a women's prison uncovered evidence of sexual extortion by the police and a judge. But it meant nothing to the Johns Committee investigator, only there to get some dirt on teachers. To question or criticize the Johns Committee was to become a target of its wrath. A columnist writing for the Orlando Sentinel dared to criticize the committee. He lost his job after he was arrested by investigators for violation of a law banning oral sex. As with the McCarthy era, the committee threatened and cajoled thousands to name names or risk public exposure for their perceived misdeeds. Result was a massive purge in the Florida school system. Alone and without counsel in front of legal authority, and questioned under oath by the investigators, teachers and students were broken down one by one. One University of Florida professor attempted suicide after falling under the committee's eye. Over 100 teachers and professors lost their jobs that we know of, but the investigation touched thousands. In 1964, the Johns Committee decided that it had to go even bigger. Interrogating people in hotel rooms about their private lives wasn't enough. The public had to see the real danger lurking in its midst. The time had come to create a report and educate the public on the gay menace in its presence. A graphic, unflinching look at the gay lifestyle, complete with pictures. Officially called Homosexuality and Citizenship in Florida, the booklet became known as the Purple Pamphlet because of its bright purple color. A title page featured two naked men kissing, their lower halves judiciously cropped out. Other pictures included a tied-up young man wearing a G-string, two men engaged in a sexual act in a bathroom, and, most bizarrely, a full page of pictures of a young boy in shorts in various poses. There was a poorly thought out and frankly pathetic section that attempted to describe the problem in vague and insulting terms with zero research. But it did include some helpful hypothetical scenarios such as this. In late evening, a well-dressed teacher enters the men's room of a large Central Florida shopping center. He enters the stall toilet, noting that the adjacent booth is occupied. There is a hole about the size of a 50-cent piece carved through the partition separating the walls. The teacher places a finger through the hole, then withdraws it. The finger of the unknown occupant of the next stall appears. The teacher then inserts his... You know what? Let's stop there. But you catch the drift. It also helpfully included a glossary of terms, a big one. Finally, someone had dared to lay bare the homosexual lifestyle and agenda for all to see, fully illustrated, and with a tremendous amount of street research. It gave such shocking details as the ability of visiting homosexuals to get prostitution services with about the same ease at comparable cost as other tourists on the town obtain the services of a high-class prostitute. The very nerve! Charging the same as straight prostitutes. The Johns Committee was confident in its publication and hoped it would become a bestseller, offering copies to anyone who would send in a quarter. They printed 2,000 of them and eagerly mailed the first 1,000 to notables such as legislators, newspapers, and law enforcement officers, waiting to see if the other 1,000 would sell. Sell it did. The quarters started rolling in from all over the country. What the Johns Committee had created was not a shocking expose of the dangers of homosexuality, but rather more of a field guide to the gay lifestyle, complete with a little bit of softcore porn thrown in. Even though copies could be obtained for a quarter through official channels, one industrious book publisher took out ads to sell copies of the pamphlet at $2 a pop. Copies were sold as straight-up porn on the streets of New York City. It was a hit, in exactly the most unintended way. Readers had a laugh at the over-the-top sensationalistic ranting about the moral disease, then moved on to the more lurid aspects of the report. The Johns Committee had created a best-selling piece of gay porn. The reaction in Florida was one of panic. The Dade County State's attorney declared the material to be obscene and threatened prosecution of anyone who sold it. You know, as you do to reports from state legislative committees. The state attorney general stepped in to ensure the Johns Committee stopped distribution of the pamphlet. The governor quickly disavowed any involvement in the work of the committee to any TV news camera he could stick his face in. It had outlived the McCarthy era and became a huge component of what would be known as the Lavender Scare. But the utter debacle of the Purple Pamphlet sealed the fate of the Johns Committee, and funding was pulled in the very next legislative session. The investigators, committee members, and staff burned as much of the internal documents as they could, which is all very above board, before lawmakers voted to seal their work until 2028. Charlie Johns resigned from the legislature soon after. A new Florida law unsealed the records as of 1993, revealing just how sordid and twisted the work of the committee truly was. And in the 9-year existence of the committee created to investigate and expose communists in higher education, not a single communist had been found. Maybe the Johns Committee was just too busy looking in the wrong holes. This has been American Esoterica. All sounds were made by me, Brian Powers. Did I get it wrong? Did I get it right? Just want to take one last horrified laugh at the Johns Committee? Drop me a note. The address is yell@americanesoterica.com. More information on this show and its episodes can be found at americanesoterica.com. Thank you for listening, and God bless America.